Have you ever wondered about the speed of smell?
Probably not, if I had to guess.
But garlic bread got me thinking about it quite a lot, and if you want to know what the speed of smell is...
Too bad, better luck next time.
Yeah, smells kind of travel all sorts of different speeds, but if you want a number, like if that's what you came here for, I'll give you a number, it's just not very good. 0.0426 meters per second. But seriously, don't quote me on that. Later in this video, I'm going to tell you where that number comes from and why it's not very good.
And when it comes to the word stank, I don't exactly know how to define it, but I sure know it when I hear it. Oh, I thought we were talking about music.
I normally burn garlic bread, but I recently cooked it to perfection because I had the idea to take it out of the oven before smelling the burning. And a very simple, obvious idea finally clicked for me that I wish had clicked many, many garlic breads ago, which is, if I smell it burning, then it's already too late. Because obviously the burning smell only exists once the burning has started, but more importantly, if I'm smelling the burning, that means that the burning smell has traveled from the oven to my nose, which takes time, and during that time, it will continue to burn and get even worse before I even find out that it got bad in the first place. And all of that got me wondering, how fast does that burning smell travel through a room?
Well, I fired up old Ask Jeeves and quickly learned that there's no such thing as the one true speed of smell. And personally, I find it way more interesting that means instead we have a range of possible smell speeds with different factors that influence where in that range your specific smell is going to end up. I wanted to start by looking at the upper end of that range. What's the fastest a smell has ever gone? And I don't know for sure, but I can tell you about a very strong contender, like much faster in that range than most smells will ever go, and that would be the smell of eucalyptus in the 1996 version of Australia. The reason that I say that is because for us, smell comes from tiny bits of stuff that float through the air in search of a nose, and if that air happens to be moving,
Wind. Wind.
Then those smelly fellas just travel along with the rest of the air at whatever speed the wind is blowing. And on April 10th, 1996, on Barrow Island, Australia, a gust of wind was clocked at 408 kilometers per hour, making it the fastest official wind speed in the history of recording wind speeds, according to the World Meteorological Organization. And on Barrow Island, they had eucalyptus trees. So it's fair to say that during that storm,
Named Olivia, by the way,
the sweet, soothing smell of eucalyptus was sent careening through space and time at devastating speeds that most... Wow, what happened? I apparently can't do that with my voice. Speeds that most smells will just never go. But did anyone actually smell it? Probably not, because anybody who was on that island that day would have had other things on their mind, like staying inside. Regardless, we can use what I'm calling the Barrow Island Eucalyptus Bombardment, or BEEB, as the upper end of our range. But what about the low end?
I think it might be moving? Perfect. That's going to be the low end of the range. Of course, the low end of this range defines conditions where there is no wind to carry the odorant molecules along, and instead they're left to travel unassisted through a process called diffusion, which can be very slow, and we can demonstrate it visually using food coloring and water. So for our purposes, let's pretend that this is a top-down view of a room with something to smell in it over here. Now, if we have a dapper little fella like this and we place him over here in the room, how long is it going to take before the smell makes its way across the room to him through diffusion alone? This may take a while. This is an actual video of how quickly it's spreading. Here's what it looks like at 10 times speed. Chances are he's going to get pretty bored before he actually ends up smelling any of what was over there because of just how slow diffusion is. Depending on what's making the smell, this process could take hours or even days to make its way across a relatively small room. And to make matters even worse, this spread just keeps getting slower and slower the farther across the room it spreads. And a big part of the reason for that is something called a concentration gradient, which works something like this. You have a bunch of something over here and none of it over there. That's a pretty big difference, and the universe just won't stand for it, so it naturally wants to spread things around a little bit. If we pause and take another look to make a comparison between a few places, you'll see that the differences aren't as dramatic anymore. The universe is still going to want to spread it around to fill all of the available space, but with less of a sense of urgency. And of course, eventually, by some miracle, it'll evenly spread and fill the entire space. And so the concentration gradient is just something that you get by comparing how densely packed or how concentrated the thing is in any two places. And the more significant that difference, the steeper the concentration gradient and the faster it's going to want to spread. And you can see that as it spreads to fill the space, that outer layer, so to speak, of the smell is filling a larger and larger space. And so the particles by nature get more and more spread out, therefore slowing the spread. But here's the really mind-bending part. Even though this spread is happening slowly, the individual particles are actually moving incredibly fast, bumbling around in a whole bunch of completely random, unhelpful directions, but overall, that crazy motion is advancing them through the room at what we are referring to as the speed of smell. And something else that can have a direct impact is temperature. Higher temperatures mean the particles have more kinetic energy, so that random bumbling is going to happen faster, which is overall going to make the diffusion process happen faster. And the last thing that I want to talk about that impacts the rate of diffusion overall is the size of the odorant molecules themselves. A while ago, some guy named Graham said, "Big boy, not move so much," or something like that. And so the type of molecule is important as well. Larger molecules will diffuse slower than smaller molecules. I found that really hard to say. But this diffusion-only example is pretty unrealistic because you don't really get air that's perfectly still. It's usually moving around a little bit. Even just walking across a room can stir up a lot of air, more than you might think. And so if I were to move my finger through this, you would see how quickly it's going to spread by comparison. And that's a more realistic image of how smells actually travel. You don't have diffusion only, and you also don't typically have 408 km/h winds. But if you're downwind from a restaurant, a gentle breeze can carry the smell of the deliciousness from their kitchen to your nose. Yes. Or from your own kitchen, you can spread the smell of garlic bread around your house through a combination of airflow and diffusion, which is determined by concentration, distance, temperature, molecular size or mass or whatever. All of this stuff is very wishy-washy. Well, it's not very wishy-washy, it's actually very technical. But it's all more useful theoretically than it is practically. So I wanted to know an actual speed of smell. In the interest of trying something out and seeing what happens, I, with the help of my lovely wife, am going to try and measure out a speed of smell using my own nose. And the way that we're going to do this is I am going to sit very still on this little green X over here, and then 6 meters away, we've got this sealed container with a stick of incense in it. Now, when we're ready to start, my wife is going to crack open the container, light the incense as fast as she can, and we're going to start a timer and see how long it takes before I can smell it at the other end of the room 6 meters away. There are a few good reasons for using incense for this, and one of them being it's a very strong, easily identifiable smell, so that's going to give me a really good chance of picking it up easily when it makes its way across the room to me. Another reason is that because of the continuous burning, it's going to be constantly adding new particulate matter into the air and creating little convection currents because of the heat from the burning, and all of that is going to help it to overcome that concentration issue that comes with diffusion sometimes. But once it's kind of gotten away from the incense stick, we want the air in here to be kind of as still as possible. So we've got windows closed, fans off. We're going to sit very still for a few minutes before starting the process to give the air a chance to settle after we've moved in the room. Let's just see how long it takes. I think I can smell it now. Yeah, I'm starting to be able to smell it. So 2 minutes, 21 seconds, or 141 seconds over a distance of 6 meters means that that incense smell averaged 0.0426 meters per second on its way to me, which is way too specific of a number for the setup that we were using. And also keep in mind that this is just one very specific speed of one very specific smell in one very specific environment. So to be able to adapt this to any other scenario, you would need to know a lot of information about things like the airflow in the room and the concentration of the particles and the size of the particles and the temperature in the room. And I just don't have any of that information. And so you cannot just go ahead and use 0.0426 meters per second as the speed of smell, but if you want to quote it as one possible speed of smell in a range of possibilities, then that's fine with me. That's all that I had for this particular video. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.